So right off the bat, I think I should kind of just apologize today, because I feel like my take today, I feel like I risk coming off very pretentious with this take I have today, especially if I don't do a great job of sort of describing what I think. Although I think my thoughts on inspiration are inherently just a little bit pretentious, because I feel like I've always had a problem with the word inspiration as it relates to art. You know, I think that so often, like, I'll have an issue with a concept, not so much because of the concept itself, but more so because of just, like, how people colloquially use the concept. Does that make sense? And I think inspiration's one of these things where, like, in an abstract sense, I don't have an issue with inspiration, with being inspired, but I feel like so often I can't help but feel that I see inspiration being used as an excuse for a lack of action. You know, the idea of feeling uninspired is one that really bothers me, because I feel like I associate inspiration with impulse, right? Especially, and this goes back to what I'm saying, is maybe my issue with this stems more so from the colloquial usage of inspiration than anything else. Because inspiration in abstract does not mean that. Inspiration just means whatever gets you going, you know? I'm inspired every day when I come here and I paint and I talk with you all. That is the right way to use that word, right? But so often, especially when I see people talk about being uninspired, they're using inspiration not as a way to say what they're... Not so much to say, you know, this is sort of a feeling that I have in general, but as a very specific thing of I'm feeling inspired because of X, so now I'm going to go do Y. There's no issue with this, again, but I feel that inspiration should be something that should just be surrounding you all the time, you know? Maybe this is something that has to do with environment, you know? Maybe I'm a bit out of touch in this area, because I make sure I surround myself with posters of everything that I like, and, you know, I make sure that no matter what, I make time in the day to read and paint and draw, to make sure that I am habitually feeling inspired. You know, inspiration seen as a state of being, I think it should be a way of life. I feel like that sounds so grandiose. I feel like that sounds so, like, high and mighty and annoying, but I really do. I think that, you know, this idea of, okay, I just watched a movie that made me excited, I'm feeling inspired, is such a bad way to do things. There's this self-help book, Atomic Habits, right? It was the first self-help book I ever read, and in my opinion, to this day, I'll say I think it's the only good self-help book, because it just lays out a lot of science in terms of, like, studies of how to develop a habit, how to, you know, get to big goals by breaking them down into small little bits. It's far less preachy than the usual self-help book. I totally recommend it if anybody's in a tiny bit of a rut. And there's this kind of foundational principle towards the beginning of the book that motivation is bullshit. It's great to feel motivated. That's awesome. And when that comes, take it. You know, it's this concept is not to dismiss motivation as much as it is to say motivation will never get you to where you need to be, because inherently being motivated is temporary. Motivation is something that comes and it goes. It is impossible to be motivated 24/7 forever. A couple days ago, I did a Paint and Talk talking about burnout, and I didn't mention it there, but I think burnout can oftentimes come from working off motivation alone, because I think motivation can, like, make you... Motivation's the type of thing that makes you go really hard for a week and then kind of fall off right after, you know? And I feel that in the book, they lay out that, you know, you don't want motivation, you want discipline. And I don't mean this in the self-help alpha way of, like, you know, wake up at 6 a.m., grind all day. You know, I'm not one of those guys at all that says that everyone needs to be doing that, especially if they don't want to be. I mean, if you like waking up at 6 a.m., sick, that's awesome. Those of us that aren't morning people, though, 9 works. I don't have an issue with that. But discipline in terms of, like, you just need to make it part of your activities to keep working towards your goals. Because if you only do it when you're motivated, you're not going to make it, right? Why am I saying all this? I feel like it might even sound like I'm just retreading the same ground as 2 days ago's Paint&Talk, where I talked about goals, right? But I'm speaking about this because I think that it has a correlation to inspiration. Maybe inspiration and motivation aren't synonyms. I feel like they are, but maybe they're not. Maybe they're more just like connected, if that makes sense. I don't think anyone would say that motivation is not found in inspiration. Oftentimes what I feel like I see a lot of people doing is they'll see something they really like that's really cool. Maybe it's a movie, maybe it's a new album that comes out. So often, and I know it's the most annoying thing in the world to use Twitter as an example, but I'll see people tweet, when a new artist drops maybe some new visuals for something. These visuals have me feeling so inspired. I'm gonna go make something. And that's great. I don't have an issue with that. That's where I really am scared in this Paint Talk of coming off as snobby. I don't have an issue with that. But I do have an issue with that being in place of, I think, the more important question of why weren't you making something already? And for a lot of these people, maybe they were. Again, that's why I know it's the most annoying thing in the world to cite Twitter, because I'm citing a sentence that I saw and extrapolating so much from it. But I do feel like it sort of begs that question of why now? You know what I mean? Like, you could have made something awesome already. So that's why I say maybe motivation, inspiration aren't so much synonyms as they are a cause and effect of each other. I think that creation, and this is why I feel like it's such a high and mighty thing to be like, inspiration needs to be a way of life. But it's true, I've talked before about how, like, I think that art is just like a natural byproduct of living life and of having things to say. Not even like living life in the very romanticized sense of like, you need to go out and, have your heart broken and then travel the world and go on a jungle safari and then you'll be interesting enough to make art. No, I think it comes from life just in the sense of like, you as an individual will feel a certain friction with the world around you at one point or another and in one way or another. Maybe it's small, maybe it's large, maybe it's because of a big political thing, or as something as simple as, there's too many bananas in your town and you don't like bananas. You know what I mean? That's such a weird example, but that's what I mean. It can be something so small, so redundant, so personal, or very large in scale. It can be anything. I think that's where art comes from, whether we realize it or not. And by proxy of me having this view, I think that I almost view it as like I don't like the idea that you can only create art when you explicitly feel inspired, because I think if you kind of look at inspiration the right way, you can be inspired by everything all the time. And I think that's a better way of phrasing what I'm trying to say here. I think that's more so what I'm trying to say. Again, I feel like this Paint Talk is being hampered down by me trying my best to not seem super snobby as I talk about this, but I think that's what I'm trying to say more so, is that inspiration, the way that we often talk about it, view it, and use it, is such a hollow view of how you could actually be inspired. You don't need to go and watch a movie to be inspired. A movie is being created in front of you as you live your own life. Maybe that movie doesn't have much going on in it right now. Maybe you're just going through what you feel to be a monotonous day-to-day life, but in every single moment you are experiencing struggles and you're coming up against things that you wish you weren't coming up against. Like, every slight inconvenience is something to be is a statement to be made, you know? If you're willing to think about it enough. So I think maybe that's a much better way of saying what I'm trying to say here. I don't want anybody to misinterpret me and be like, when you watch that movie next time and you feel inspired, you're a dumb guy. No, not at all. I get that all the time. Especially, I'm using movies as an example because that's a big thing for me, especially. Movies are something that can inspire me like nothing else. Inspire me in that cheesy sense that I'm talking about of like, man, I want to go make something right now because I just watched that movie. You know, I'm just as much somebody that does that, but I feel that when you treat inspiration as a way to get to motivation, another thing I see people doing is they'll go like, I need inspiration, so I'm going to go to the museum today in order to find some inspiration to create. And that's awesome. I mean, you know, I'm here in New York. I go to the Met, I go to the MoMA all the time. For some reason, I've never been to the Guggenheim still, by the way. I got to work on that. That's weird. I don't know why I haven't gone to the Guggenheim. But I've passed it so many times, too. But anyways, like, I think that's awesome. I don't think that's a bad thing. But I think when you use that, instead of, like, just looking for the art directly in front of you, you know, what's sitting in front of you right now that just exists as a way to say something without having to be inspired. Because I think also, and this is such a, I don't know, this is a part of this that I really feel bad even saying, but I think that when you make direct inspiration, like in the way I've been talking about here, like I need inspiration to go get motivated to make some cool art today. I think when you do it that way, you often will find yourself copying a little bit more. Not copying in a bad sense, not even copying, because I feel like copying suggests that it's like intentional, you know, like I'm gonna copy this guy's homework. I don't mean it like that. I mean it more so in terms of like, it takes away a little bit of your originality when you need somebody else to kind of get you amped up to go make something cool. That's how I feel. And that's why I think that, like, inspiration, again, the way I life things, so I feel like I'm keep repeating that because I'm looking for a different way to say it. Maybe I think inspiration needs to become a discipline in its own right. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's just as much value in somebody who learns to go out to the world around them and genuinely view and find interesting things to say and learn to, like, have that perspective. And I'm not even saying that I'm somebody that's great at this, by the way. I'm definitely not. I mean, like, you guys see my paintings. I paint a red circle half the time, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not gonna sit here and act like I'm somebody who's not a huge perpetuator of this, but I feel like turning inspiration into a discipline in its own right is very valuable. You know what I mean? Like, I think graphic design is something I can speak of fairly easily because that's what I do for my day job, where, like, for me, looking at a design is not something that's reserved for, like, when I'm in a museum looking at the posters, or when I'm in a poster store looking at the posters there, or when I'm in a record store looking at the posters there. I mean, there's posters everywhere for me to look at, and I love a good poster, don't get me wrong. But I think it's just as much, you know, whenever I've traveled, I love looking at the street signs. I think they're so interesting. Warning signs are so interesting. Like, there's inspiration all around you if you're willing to look. On an aesthetic level, on a meaning level, just in every way you can imagine, there's inspiration to be found if you're willing to look for it. And that's where it's like, I do think that I feel terrible going like, I don't like inspiration as a concept, because that's not true. I mean, clearly that's not true, but I don't like inspiration being treated as something that is a burst you need. You know, people treat inspiration like it's like a drug you gotta take. It's like, oh, when I have a cold, when I have a little bit of artist block, I'll take an Advil, I'll get inspired. But I think it needs to be treated more so as almost in the way that you work out and make sure to not eat fast food to stay in general good shape, right? I'm not saying this isn't about to go become a gym thing, but the way that you know, stay mobile and don't eat fast food, try and eat your veggies, stay in good shape. I think inspiration needs to be something more like that, because I think that's where a whole lot of magic lies. You know, I think that treating inspiration as a instantaneous burst that will come every now and again when you need it, or you got to go seek it out when you need it, is an inherently volatile and unstable way to find things to create about. Don't even know what word I was looking for there. Yeah, but that's just my thoughts on inspiration. This is the painting. I'm trying more of that whole, let's get some colors together. Let's do one big bold swatch that's very colorful against a messy, scary thing. And I felt that in yesterday's, okay, so I haven't been liking these because I don't think they're refined enough, right? That's my big thing. I don't think the colors are refined enough. I don't think that the messy part of it feels refined enough. And in yesterday's, I thought it got it refined because I toned down the messiness a ton and just put some streaks in the red and had a little black square. And I thought it felt super refined, but wasn't as visceral as I wanted it to be. So what I'm trying here is to make the tones of red in the last primary color within the messiness over here. And I need to think on this one. Go check this out over on Instagram to see what I end up thinking about this later. I don't know if I like it. I don't know how I feel about this one just yet. I think there could be something too in maybe getting the lines exactly straight. Like if this was a straight line and this was a straight line, I think there might be something better in that. What I might honestly do for the first time in Paint&Talk history is pre-paint these two with tape over the course of like 2 days, just to experiment, maybe even for like the final version of these, because I don't want to be doing that too much. But maybe for the final one of these, I'll tape off this section and the whole Paint&Talk, I'll just make this super detailed and get that refined. Because I think that could be the solution. I don't know though, because I like the little messiness there too. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about this. Definitely go check this one out. I'll write something up about this, see how I end up thinking about it in my head. And you know, until next time, guys, gals, and pals, my name is Max Dice. This has been Paint&Talk episode 120. I'm here every morning, painting and talking with you all.